Hello, friends. It's been a while since I did a video, but Mr. Spinola tells me that the advanced placement macro and microeconomics tests are coming soon, and some of you have decided to take those tests, and I applaud you for doing that. I think that it's worth certainly a try to do that. And he also said that there are some things that may not be covered in class prior to the test that might be important. And I think he's right. I think chapter 35 in your textbook is a very important chapter, right? And first of all, I would definitely read that chapter. It's entitled Extended Analysis. Now, there are two ways that the analysis is going to extend. One is that we are going to incorporate, when I say the analysis of the macroeconomy. So let me step back for a second and say that in class so far, you constructed a model, the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model, that you used at times to kind of analyze and explain what was happening in the economy. So, if there was unemployment, you may have said the reason that there's unemployment is because there is a lack of demand, right? Demand fell below the level of output that was necessary to fully employ all resources. You may have said at times that there was cost push inflation, supply side inflation, or stagflation. So, you talked about circumstances and you used a model to explain or predict those circumstances, right? However, that model had a limitation. And the limitation to that model is that it really only referred to the short run, not the long run, right? So there's a difference in macroeconomics between a short run condition and circumstance in the economy and the long run condition and circumstance in the economy. And so when we extend the analysis, the extension is to add the long run, right? So that's the first thing that we're going to do is talk about the long run versus the short run in macroeconomics. The second extension that you'll find in chapter 35 in your textbook is an analysis between, or not, I don't know if I would say between, a look at the relationship between inflation and unemployment, right? Now, if you cared whatsoever about what was happening in the macroeconomy right now, which I'm sure you don't, but if you did, you would know that a big subject of discussion out there now is inflation. And I'm sure Mr. Spinola talked with you at length about what inflation is, a rise in the average or overall price level. But the question now is, and you created scenarios where there could be inflation, but the question now that you're going to look in extended analysis is what's the relationship between inflation and unemployment? Or is there a relationship between inflation and unemployment? And it also will incorporate the short and the long run. But back to the long run in terms of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Now, the focus of that comparison between the long run in terms of aggregate supply and aggregate demand is going to be on aggregate supply. Now, if you remember, the short run aggregate supply curve slopes up and to the right, right? So if we were drawing the model, right, we would put on the vertical axis price level, and we would put on the horizontal axis output, right? And then if we were drawing the short run aggregate supply curve, it would slope up and to the right, and we would put IS. Now, I'm wondering if you recall why the short run aggregate supply curve slopes upward. Why when price, and ultimately what that means is when price level goes up, so will the level of output. So as the overall average price level increases, firms will want to produce more output. So why is that? Oh my goodness, do I wish we were in a classroom and I asked that question and some one of you kids would lift your head from your phone and pull out your earbuds and maybe even, darn it, raise your hand and say, I know the answer to that question, kind elderly instructor. The reason, right, the reason that short run aggregate supply curve slopes up, The reason that output increases when price level increases is because input prices are fixed in the short run. What? What? Input prices are fixed in the short run? Kind instructor, what does that mean? What does that mean, input prices are fixed in the short run? Well, input prices are the prices of the factors of production, the things that go into producing products and services. The easiest one to understand is wages. So the biggest, two-thirds of the cost of producing the average product or service is wages, right? So the most important factor of production is wages, right? So we're saying in the macroeconomic short run, fundamentally input prices slash nominal wages. Oh, what does nominal mean? Nominal. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Maybe I can't remember. But nominal is just actually the wage, right? So a nominal wage you may earn today is $10 an hour. That's the nominal wage, right? As opposed to the real wage. But the nominal wage is just the wage. And nominal wages are fixed in the short run. All input prices are fixed in the short run. And so that's why the curve slopes up. What we mean by that is if you fix input prices, right, and output prices, which you see on the vertical axis, output prices increase and input prices remain the same, then the profitability of the firm increases and the firm has an incentive to expand an output. Let me say it again. I mean, you went over this and you took a test and probably didn't do very well on it, but you took a test on this and again, in the short run, with the short run aggregate supply curve, right? When price level increases, right, and input prices are fixed, then profits for firms will increase, which will encourage them to expand output. Now, if you had a textbook and you stop the tape, right, stop the video, go get your book, right? Now, you can start it again, but if you got your textbook and you went to page 709 in your textbook and figure 35.1, you would see, and on the left side of that illustration, a picture of the short run aggregate supply curve. And look at it. It's sloping upward like that's because input prices are fixed, right? That's what defines the short run. In the long run, input prices are variable. Nominal wages are variable. Nominal wages, input prices in general, can change in the long run. In the short run, they're fixed. Now, let me make sure I have the right page there. Yes, that's page 709, and it's illustration 35.1. If you look on the left side of that, you'll see the short run aggregate supply curve. If you look on the right side, you'll see the long run aggregate supply curve. And what you'll notice is the long run aggregate supply curve is vertical. It doesn't slope upward. It is vertical at QF. What does QF mean? Well, you might be thinking, doggone it, you old geezer, that's why we have you on the video, to tell us what QF is. Well, QF means quantity full. Oh, wait a minute. So are we saying, in the long run, the level of equilibrium, right, the economy, will gravitate to an output level that fully employs all resources? Are we saying the long run destiny of the macroeconomy is full employment? Yes, that is what we're saying. We're saying if input prices are flexible and variable and they adjust, then in the long run, what will happen is the economy will gravitate to a level of output that fully employs all resources. So naturally, on its own, it will go there. Now you might say, kind instructor, I think Mr. Spinola told us that the classical economists believed that, but the Keynesian economists kind of disputed it. Well, not really, right? The classical economists believed that the economy would move to full employment in the long run, and so did Keynes. The difference is, and was, and now is that classical economists, and now their successors, the monetarists and the neoclassical economists, believe that will happen, and so do Keynesians, but it's a matter of how quickly, right? Nevertheless, we digress there and go back to full employment being, or to the long run aggregate supply being vertical at full employment. Look at the picture there. It is a LRAS, long run aggregate supply, vertical at full employment, right? Now, if you look at that illustration and you pick a price level, P1, P2, P3, you see each of those, there's an aggregate supply curve there, right? And where it intersects the long run, there's a short run aggregate supply curve. Where it intersects the long run aggregate supply curve is equilibrium, right? Now, flip the page. And if you flip the page and you go to illustration 35.2 on page 710, then what you see there is an economy that is in short run and long run equilibrium. Short run and long run equilibrium. Now, the reason it's in short run equilibrium is because the short run at price level, at price level P1, right, in your textbook, at price level P1, short run aggregate supply is equal to aggregate demand. So for there to be equilibrium, short run aggregate supply has to equal aggregate demand, right? That's equilibrium in the short run. For there to be long run equilibrium, short run aggregate supply has to equal aggregate demand at a level of unemployment, or at a level of output that fully employs all resources. Now let's talk about that level of output. How much would it be? Well, I mean, fundamentally, we would say that there has to be enough production. This level of output is enough production that every worker who wants to work there would be a job for, right? So every worker that wants to be employed, there would be a job for, and the level of output at which that is true would be considered full employment, right? So at full employment, there'd be a job for everyone. Now there probably be some level of unemployment. There'd be frictional and structural unemployment, or not structural, frictional and yes, frictional and structural unemployment, but no cyclical unemployment, right? Now, okay, so if you look at that picture, figure 35.2, that's an economy at long run and short run equilibrium. What we're saying is, in the long run, this is what the economy will look like. Now, if you take the AP test, inevitably they're going to ask you a question about that. They're going to say, assume the economy is in long run equilibrium. If that's the assumption, that's the picture you should be drawing, right? Now, we're saying if you let the economy go, eventually you'll get to figure 35.2, right? Now, if you go one additional page to page 711, you'll start to see what happens when short run equilibrium does not equate to long run equilibrium. And so let's just do one, and then we'll end this tape, right? Let's just do the figure 35.3. Let's do the illustration on the left there. And what you see at point A is the economy is at full employment and long run equilibrium. Aggregate demand equals aggregate supply at a level of output that fully employs all resources. That's long run equilibrium. But what happens is aggregate demand goes up. Oh, aggregate demand goes up. What happens? We move to point B. Well, at point B, the level of output is beyond full employment, and prices have gone up. That's demand pull inflation. Now, point B is possible in the short run. Why? Output has even gone up beyond full employment. Can output go beyond full employment? Yes, right? Full employment is not capacity. I mean, output can go beyond full employment, but the only way it can go beyond full employment is because prices are going up. So firms have this incentive to produce more. So output can keep going up. Unemployment will go down even further, right? There'll be some level of inflation, and this can occur because in that time period, input prices and wages are fixed. That's what's happening to some extent right now. Right now, wages are kind of fixed, but demand is going up, right? And so output is going up. Right now, output is going up and prices are going up, right? But what will happen eventually is that nominal wages and input prices will increase. When they increase, it shifts the short run supply curve left to point C. Remember that? So in the short run, when input prices are fixed, the supply curve is fixed. But if those input prices change, if they go up, then the supply curve shifts down. If they go down, then the supply curve shifts up. Well, in the short run, they're here. But in the long run, if prices go up and then wages respond by going up, then the short run supply curve shifts back and we move back to C. If you look at that illustration, where's C? Back at full employment. Wages will keep going up, output will go down until we reach that full employment long run equilibrium. So at C, we're back at equilibrium with somewhat higher prices, but that's what we'll gravitate to. It's a lot. Oh my goodness, kids. I wish I had you in the classroom and we had a chalkboard, and as of today we could maybe take our masks off if you get vaccinated, or if I'm vaccinated, we could take our masks off according to the CDC today. And I could illustrate this on the board. It would be such a wonderful experience for all of us, for you, for me, for Mr. Spinola, for your AP grade. But unfortunately, this is what you've got. Hopefully this gives you some kind of familiarity with this. And the other scenarios are in your book too. What if aggregate demand goes down? What if aggregate supply goes up or down? The 4 scenarios are in that chapter. But what you need to remember is those scenarios where output is not equal to full employment can only exist in the short run. And then wages, input prices / wages will adjust and the economy will gravitate back to full employment. Maybe we'll do another video, and on that video we'll do the other scenarios. Maybe that might be helpful. Okay. All right, so we'll conclude this here.